Sorry. I'm looking at things and receiving messages and such. Eh. Hmm. 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 Hang on. I'm gonna. It's not. I'm not seeing the. There's no, like. I'm not seeing the audio. It's not doing anything. Hold on. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Boop. All right. Hi. Howdy. Nice to meet you. Can you hear me? It's not my cat. Haha, there it is. I found it. I'm very smart and I'm good at paying attention to things and stuff. Here we are today with a. I have read this story before. It's one of like two of the stories in this book that I have read before. And it's about an evil clock. If you know, you know. It's about an evil clock with penises on it. Okay. So, let's just get right into it. Shall we? Okay. I don't know why I did that. I doubt you'll remember Clocky Watson. Little, with a ginger mustache. Used to hang around the antique sales after the war. I doubt I'd remember him myself, though many a bad turn we did each other. Except for the way he died, and the story he told me before he died. I remember the first sale he came to at Chelford Village Hall. Those were the days. Rows of varnished, bulbous-legged tables and overstuffed sofas with bidders perched on every arm eating sandwiches cut by the village wives and massive in navy floral... What? The wording is a touch odd. Massive in navy floral prints. The people are massive. I'm very good at... No, it's not sexy. Sorry. It's scary. There just happens to be penises involved. This is just my streaming outfit. I don't know why. It is now, though. This is what I wear now. I live in this. It's my anime character outfit, just every single episode, unless a special event occurs. Auctioneers had time to be witty in those days. I remember young Taberner. Nice pair of marble lions. Stick 'em on your gatepost to sneer at passing strangers. Who'll stop me at £2? Thin as a rail he was then. Who'd have thought he'd die of a heart attack at 18 stone? I don't know how much weight that is, but I don't know math. Anyway, there was Clocky in his green pork pie hat and D-mob suit, already wearing thin. I noticed him because of the way he looked at things. Pure avarice. By the time he'd picked something up and turned it over in his little pale hands with the ginger hairs on the back, you'd have thought it was his already. Mind you, he wasn't such a fool as to let you know what he was bidding for. He handled everything. But mostly he handled clocks. Viennese wall clocks, a glut on the market in those days with their big glass cases and eagles on top and brass pendulums swinging. Every old lady who died seemed to have at least 3. They hung in rows on the darkest wall of any sale room. £3 they'd fetch if all the decorative knobs were intact, and they were working. If some knobs were missing, the price was halved, and if they wouldn't tick when you opened the case and swung the pendulum, they weren't worth 5 bob. It can cost the earth to get a dead clock repaired, and your profit's gone. So there were we dealers, going along the row, twiddling and opening and swinging the pendulums one after another. I'd never known a worse lot. Couldn't get a tick out of them, and every second knob, and every second knob missing. I didn't bother to bid. Neither did anybody else, except Clocky. He got 12 in succession at 5 bob each. Damn. By the end, people were starting to laugh, but Clocky just dipped his head with that sly little grin of his. I was behind him in the queue to pay the auctioneer's clerk. He interested me because he didn't look like an idiot. I can tell you, he was hard up. He started paying in dirty pound notes, but had to finish with pennies. But he had 5 pence left, enough for a sandwich. I hadn't seen him eat anything all day. I was next in line, had my check ready, so I caught up with him in the kitchen, where the village women were clearing up. 2.5 spam sandwiches left, and 2 rounds of cheese.
6 pence the lot, said the woman. I don't want to take them home. My husband's sick.
Clocky was never one to miss a bargain, but it nearly finished him. He started to turn out all his pockets for the last penny and pulled out a dirty handkerchief by mistake. With it came a shower of varnished wooden knobs from Viennese clocks. Sneaky little bastard. I made him turn all his pockets out. I was twice his size and not to be trifled with. In his inside pockets there were 3 gilded eagles. God, asshole. I dragged him back to the clocks themselves and felt inside the works, and each had a little bit of paper stuffed between the cogs to stop it working. Naughty. Oh, he'd been busy, Clocky. Little fingers busy in the dark. 30 quid's worth of clocks reduced to rubbish. I dragged him along to the auctioneer, but Clocky said he'd taken the knobs and eagles off after he'd bought the clocks, to keep them safe from thieves.
Liar!
Liar and liar who lies. Liar. And of course, he knew nothing about the bits of paper. Oh. And young Taverner was too busy counting the checks for the big stuff, like the Sheraton tables, and everyone was too busy carrying off out to their vans. Even the village copper wasn't interested. Too busy waving a bundle of brass stair rods he'd got for 2 bob. Clocky turned to me, very pale and eyes blazing. Where do you get off, bro? He was eating his sandwiches like a ravening wolf. Now he's off the hook. I'll remember you. Nearly did me for my first sale. By my last, I'll have eaten you, I said. As I said, I was a big feller then, but I shivered. It was like a starving dog to try to take a bone off. Clock was hungry for a lot more than sandwiches. Pussy? Sorry. As I drove out, I passed him wheeling his clocks home in an old pram, like a tramp. He took up with Joe Gorman after that. Joe and his shop were famous throughout Cheshire. He'd been a big dealer in his day and a crafty sod, but he was 83 by then. He'd given up. He had a lot of good stuff left, but buried in the middle of great heaps of rubbish. It's like my grandma. Oh. Piled up to the low ceilings. Nobody knew what he had, and he wouldn't let anybody sort it. You'd see the gilt leg of a Louis the 14th. It's Roman numerals. You'd see the gilt leg of a Louis the 14th chair glinting out through a huddle of old black bicycles. You brought bicycles into your house? Why? That's weird. I used to drop in to see Joe regularly, let him go on about the way he put things over for people 50 years ago. Keep on giving that gilt leg a friendly tug while he wasn't looking. It took me 3 months to work that chair out to the surface. Then I pretended to notice it for the first time. Gave a heave, and out it came. Not bad, Joe. Not much.
You clumsy bugger, you've broken the back of it.
I looked. The broken ends were filthy. They'd been broken years before. I showed him before he got his lawyer onto me. He cackled with glee. He'd known it was broken all the time.
A right battle you had getting that out, lad. I've been watching you.
How much?
Not for sale. Put it back.
It was no good arguing. That only made him more stubborn. It nearly broke my heart. I wanted that chair for my own place, and in another 3 months it wouldn't be worth having. Rain dripping down from the sagging, black cobweb ceiling was lifting the gilding off the back. Well, be seeing you, Joe.
Oi!
Said, lifting a hand nobbled with arthritis. Oh.
You've been good company. You can have it for £1.
I paid him, and he folded the note small and tucked it into a pocket of his greasy waistcoat.
I'll not be seeing you around then. Now you've got your chair.
I looked at him. Old cloth cap, the Sheraton armchair he always sat in, making the striped brocade blacker and blacker with the years. Ooh. The tabby cat on his knee, moth-eaten and purring. Oh. Its brown It's brown congealed saucer of milk. Oh, that's ew. That's gross. That's milk. The glass oil lamp without a shade that was his only source of light because he said he wasn't keeping the electric board in his old age. I thought it might what it might I thought what it must be like to be old when once you'd been young and quick and sharp as a needle. Us dealers had a bet on about Joe, whether he or his shop would collapse first or whether they'd go together. The damp thatch sagged, the whole house leaned with salt substance, only held up by the massive central chimney. Nobody had dared go upstairs for years. People reckoned one day there'd be a rumble, then there'd be a pile of smashed furniture, worm-eaten beams, and damp thatch. And when they dug down, Joe and his cat would still be sitting there, stone dead. I'll come again, Joe. That table leg looks interesting. He cackled.
That's a big boy, Chippendale. Got it at the Friendly Oil Sale after Friendly shot himself in 1926.
He was joking. Or was he? I never did find out because Clocky Watson discovered him. Anytime you went there, you'd find Clocky already sitting, listening to the old man telling of his ancient triumphs. After a bit, Clocky would bring one of his wretched clocks down to clean while Joe talked. Pretty soon, Joe let him clear a bit of space by the window for a workshop. Joe would sit and brew tea and tell Clocky he was restoring the clock all wrong. Clocky had an old blue van by that time, and he was making a living running van loads of restored clocks down to tourist towns like Stratford and Cambridge, where the first American tourists were arriving to be fleeced. He ran a stall in Cambridge Market from the back of his van, which had Clocky Watson painted on the side, and very bad paintings of Louis XV clocks, which he'd never seen outside the Lady Lever Art Gallery. I heard he drove the Cambridge dealers wild, which made him a bit of a folk hero locally, as we couldn't stand the southern dealers with their big Mercedes and camel hair coats and wads of notes. A bit of folk hero, that is, until the night Joe's shop collapsed. People heard the rumble and came running. All that was left was the central chimney sticking out, and a pile of smashed timber, already alight because Joe always left his paraffin lamp burning all night to discourage burglars. The fire brigade could do nothing with it. Damp though it must have been, by the morning, all that was left was ashes. Halfway through the blaze, somebody said, Joe's not still in there, is he? We had an awful vision, and all went belting off to Barnton, where he sometimes slept at his sister's. He was there, all right. Dead. Someone had got there before us and told him, and he died of a heart attack. Somebody said afterwards how right and poetic it was, the old boy and his shop ending on the same night, after all. I didn't think so, because I had made a few inquiries. The woman who kept the shop opposite said she'd heard 2 quick, sharp bangs before the rumble that brought Joe's shop down. And Clocky Watson's van had been parked around the back all day, which the woman thought funny as it was a Sunday and the shop was shut. And we all knew Clocky had had commission in the Royal Engineers and frequently boasted in the pub of the bridges he'd blown up in Burma. Sneaky boy. Clocky and the blue van disappeared for a week. Rightly fucking so, I'd say. Then he turned up with a van load of Welsh dressers, spindle-backed rockers, and Wedgwood. He boasted he'd tricked Welsh farmers out for a song. That van load was the basis of his real prosperity, and he never looked back. I didn't doubt it about the Welsh farmers. There were rich pickings in Wales in those days. But what had the blue van carried away from the shop on the day before the fire? Nobody would ever know for sure, but I guess the Chippendale table from Framley Hall, at least. Trouble is, if you make inquiries about somebody, people tell them they're being inquired after. Clocky caught me in the backyard of the pub one night.
After me again, Ashton,
he said. He was very cool, lighting up one of those little cigars he began smoking about the town.
You killed Joe when you wrecked his shop.
Murder?
Prove it.
I had nothing to say.
Ashes to ashes, boyo. Dust to dust.
The next thing he did was to buy the Allington house. Fancy. A huge, semi-detached villa in the Gothic style. Oh my god, I love the Gothic style. Alderman Allington had been the big knob in our town for... big nub. had been the big knob in our town for 60 years, driving out in his black Rolls with the brass headlamps and chauffeur and livery. Who wears livery anymore? Although I guess this was like... He doesn't mention what year this is supposed to be, but I know he was at least around in the 40s. So... I don't know. He might tell us. I don't remember. He never missed a council meeting, right to the end. So hardly anybody grasped that his childless wife had died, his money departed, and his servants gone. From the outside, it was still the grand Allington house. He'd been dead a fortnight when they missed him. It was August, and most people were away. A week in August. He was... Oh, sorry, a fortnight is 2 weeks. He'd been dead for 2 weeks in August. And they didn't find him. That's disgusting. That's disgusting. There sat Alderman Allington, dressed for dinner, or a full meeting of the council, with thick gray cobwebs dangling from the chandelier and draping the knives and forks of the silver dinner service. And all he had in front of him was bread and cheese. Wait, you live in a house of... Are you sure you're not a ghost? Are you sure this guy's not a ghost? He lives in a house with cobwebs on the silverware. Man's a ghost. You can't come in my room. Sorry, kitten. She's nerdy. Nobody rushed to buy the Allington house with its 60-foot ballroom. Jesus! Perhaps nobody felt big enough to fill Alderman Allington's shoes. Perhaps it was even the thought of him sitting there a fortnight in evening dress with moldering bread and cheese in front of him. Perhaps the house was just too big for modern tastes. Yeah, most people only know, like, 6 people. I think I know 6 people. I could invite 6 people to my house. That's about it. None of this bothered Clocky, who got the house and the furniture for $4,000. Jesus! Although, $4,000, depending on what year it is, that might be expensive. I don't know. He even got the rolls, for there was no air, and the lawyers were afraid of vandals. God damn. Clocky boasted he sold the rolls within 2 days for $2,000. He was the first to spot the London boom in vintage cars. Oh yes, Clocky Watson was riding high. But I reckoned he was riding for a fall. Even that crabbed, calloused soul could not enjoy walking that gray house, where an old man had sat down to supper and never got up again. I said as much in the pub. Somebody told him what I'd said. He came over to laugh in my face and invite me across so I could see. It was no longer a house. A huge sign said, Clocky Watson Antiques, in gilt lettering. In gilt lettering on black, like the flashier kind of funeral parlor. The old man's beautiful overgrown garden had been gouged out into a red gravel car park. That's insulting, and I'm glad you died. That was harsh, but I prefer gardens. Fuck your car park. The main rooms had been stripped of everything saleable, fitted with neon lighting and filled with... neon lighting? Fuck off. And filled with antiques so wonderful that I knew they must have been stolen. Yeah, but it was the rooms at the back that really broke my heart. The mahogany ballroom floor was covered with black marble clocks from one end to the other. A city of clocks. Like a view over black marble London or a miniature cemetery of black gravestones. Not a clock ticked. They were dumb, like black cattle awaiting slaughter. Are you done? Are you done? She's not done. She's not done. Already the spiders were spinning webs in them. What the? Investment, boyo. Investment. $5 each. Nobody wants them. People are throwing them out. But in 10 years' time, when there's no clocks left in the old trade, 40 quid, 50. There's 1,000 clocks here. You lay down your little bottles of wine, Ashton. I'll lay down clocks. You're mad. We'll see. He showed me another room, every wall packed with Georgian barometers, exquisite things. He saw my admiration. They're all off to Germany next week. 3 container loads. He flicked ash from his cigar onto the floor. You feel pleased to sell one, Ashton? I sell by the 100. I told you I was going to eat you, Ashton. May God forgive you, I said. What happens when all the antiques are gone? You go bankrupt, I'll find something else to sell. Rosebud chamber pots, Victorian postcards. I'm buying them up cheap already. Keep anything for 20 years, you'll make a fortune. I really hated him then. The wicked was flourishing as the green bay tree. I actively sought to do him harm. It was surprising how easily I got the chance. As they say, the devil finds work for idle hands. I'd taken my wife shopping in Muncaster on New Year's Eve as a conciliatory gesture. I've been neglecting her recently, building up my business, so I let her spend the day on Plainsbury's. I admired the dresses she tried on and the curtain lengths she held up. We bought piffling household things like tap washers and carpet shampoo we'd needed for months. It was hot, stuffy, and boring. And as we left the store, I felt like giving myself a treat. Just a little treat. There was an antique supermarket in a basement behind Plainsbury's. It was run by a sharp young Jew who was cashing in on the rich married women who are... The phrasing is... Aren't you supposed to say Jewish person and not... I don't know. I'm not 100% certain. Just, it hits weird saying it like that. I don't know. A sharp young Jewish person who was cashing in on rich married women who were starting to want to play at antique dealing. My wife, glutted and laden, followed me for once without complaint. I was disappointed. The place had gone downhill, and in the old days a bargain had always been possible because the young wives hadn't known the value of half they were selling. But now there were outbreaks of the trendy and unsaleable old Victorian harmoniums. What the fuck is that? What the fuck is a harmonium? I don't know. Harmonium. Dug out of the Muncaster slum clearance areas, Victorian bloomers sold by students in jeans wearing too much makeup. Don't judge. Don't judge. Even some modern brass guns and cart horses. The dry rot in the body of the dying antique trade. I was round the whole place in 5 minutes, despair in my heart. I had a word with Monty, the grizzled, crop-haired veteran who managed the place.
Bad, Mr. Ashton. It's downright murder. Boss has gone to pieces. Lost all his business sense. These young married women, in the old days when their money ran out and they couldn't pay the rent, he'd take their stuff in payment and throw 'em out. That's business. Now he's letting them pay their rent in bed.
Gross.
Up to his neck in 3 divorce cases, and one of them's pregnant. Oh, God. That's all he thinks about these days.
Get the man neutered. Get rid. Get rid. I took a heavy-hearted look around. It's always depressing when a good source dries up. It was when I saw it. It was then I saw it. High up on an Edwardian tall boy, big as a mahogany cliff. A black clock. Massive. What we call in the trade a bracket clock, though you'd put it on your mantelpiece. Shaking with excitement, I grabbed a kitchen chair and climbed up to examine it. It was made of ebony or some other dark, close-grained wood I didn't know, inlaid with ormolu. Gold feet, exquisitely chiseled. A gold mask above the dial and 5 gold balls on top, ticking softly and evenly, nowhere on the works. I turned it gently so as to not damage the pendulum. The back of the movement was engraved, an 18th century fusee. The maker was John Pike of London. Pike had been clockmaker to the Prince of Wales. Trembling, I reached for the price ticket. If it was under £1,000, I had a bargain worth taking straight to Sotheby's. The price ticket read 25. The price ticket read £25. ... And my heart sank. The owner knew its value, though what it was doing among all this tat.
Nice, isn't it?
Monty, coming up behind me, made me jump. No chance for discount for trade, I suppose, I said bitterly.
No discount,
said Monty, enjoying some kind of private joke at my expense.
25. The boss said, no discount.
2,500, of course.
No, Squire. 25 quid. 25 greenbacks.
Is this some kind of joke? I turned back to the clock. Cheap plastic repros were coming onto the market then from Italy. But surely I knew real wood. A real Georgian Fusi.
It's genuine. A genuine chore bike. Boss had it at the Manchester Museum. We've got a certificate.
I scrambled down and wrote a very wild check. The check was wild. It ran all over the place. It flew out the door. Jumped on a boxcar and went all the way to Soho. Sorry. Joff, came a low voice from the window shadowed behind us. My wife's voice. Joff, what are you buying? A genuine pike. Got it for 25. You can just get your money back. I'm not having that thing in the house. What? Can't you see what it is? Are you blind? She dropped her parcels and scrambled up on the chair. I couldn't help noticing her legs, which was odd. My wife has very pretty legs, but I'd lived with them for 8 years. But now, as her black skirt rode up with the effort of scrambling, I noticed the plump smoothness of calf, the dimple behind the knee. I was seized with a fantasy of dumping the clock in the car and driving home like a maniac and making love to my wife with the black clock ticking in the corner of our bedroom. But nothing could have been further from her mind. She turned to me with a pale and outraged face. Can't you see the feet? I looked closely and was surprised. Instead of the usual lion's foot, they were gilded cloven hooves. Her hand moved upwards, caught between a desire to show me and snaking revulsion. The gilded mask above the dial wasn't the usual goddess or lion's head, but a goat's head, with tight curled horns and oval eyes. On the silver dial was engraved the number 13, below the usual number 1. And the corner spandrels round the dial contained miniature male genitals, well draped with vine fronds, but definitely gilded male genitals. Penises! They're penises! Cock and balls! So what? I said. Just makes it more special. Special? She said. Special? Can't you feel it's evil? Well, I bought it now. Aren't you overreacting? Don't be saying that. Don't be talking like that. This guy, we've read a couple of stories. He's got like a bit of an issue with women. Just like a little, it's just a touch. Just a bit. Just a skosh. Just a smidge. Just a wee tat issue with women. I wonder what his relationship was like with his mother. I was ashamed of her, going on like this in front of Monty. Oh, fuck off. I wanted to punish her, put the clock in the corner of the bedroom and make love to her on the floor beneath. And if she didn't like the idea, so much the better. Oh, no, don't be talking like that. That's fucked up. Don't be doing that. Get out. Find a hotel room. Go the fuck away. Don't. I'm not having it in the house, she said. If you bring it in, I'm leaving you. I won't ride in the car with it, and I'll thank you to give me half an hour to pack and leave before you fetch it in. When she said the word leave, I suddenly knew she meant it. All right, I'll keep it down the garden shed. No. All right, I'll drive it straight to London. You'll find me gone when you get back. I glanced at Monty, hating this scene in public, but he didn't seem surprised, just interested. Look, I shouted, I'm not throwing up the chance of making 2,000 quid. What do you know about antiques? I know about that one. I looked helplessly at Monty. You can't have your money back, he said. A sale's made. Did the others want their money back? Asked my wife. Monty shrugged. How many others wanted their money back? Asked my wife, sensing victory. Monty shrugged again. In the end, they just leave it on our doorstep when we're shut. It's a wonder it hasn't been stolen, but the dogs won't even pee on it. Dogs have sense. Well, Monty, we won't even bother to take it down. You can keep your £25 and welcome to it. She pulled on her gloves as if that made it final. I wish the hell somebody would take it, said Monty. We've had no bloody luck at all since it came. It was then the idea came into mind. Can you do a delivery? Monty nodded. I gave him Clocky Watson's address. Happy New Year on it, on the wrapping, I said. He got it, of course. I heard him boasting in the pub, though he didn't know who'd sent it. Clucky didn't make any secret of his triumphs, however dark he kept his fiddles. Then I heard he was drinking hard, that he'd sit in a corner, pale and sweating, knocking back the whiskeys one after another and talking non-stop until people just went away. I clashed with him at several auctions and beat him hollow. He couldn't seem to concentrate. Then he'd develop a nervous trick of nodding to himself, fatal at auctions. There was a lot of junk knocked down to him he'd never intended to bid for, let alone buy, and it cost him. Because when people saw him bidding for junk, they'd bid against him, thinking he'd noticed something valuable they missed. Then they began to force up the bidding against him for a cruel laugh once they saw he no longer knew what he was doing. As I said, he was never popular after Joe Gorman's death. Then he just vanished. When he hadn't shown up for 3 months at any auction, I began to get nosy. Went around to the old Allington house. Looked a bit empty, a bit thin on items, like an antique business does when it's starting to fail. The Graham black and gold name board was starting to flake in the sun. The weeds were sprouting all over the car park. Good. Fuck your car park. It was a total stranger who came out to serve me. I toyed with this and that. Bought up a job lot of 1930s novelty brass ashtrays, cats' faces, crescent moons, and the like. Then said casually, "Mr. Watson around?" "He's in London at the moment, sir." The man looked decidedly worried. "I'm running the shop for him." I couldn't leave it alone. "You know Clocky well. My name's Ashton. Got a shop in town." "Yes, I've heard him speak of you." "Has he still got that black clock with the cloven hooves?" "As far as I know. Didn't leave it behind here, sir." Went round to the Allington house about once a month after that. Not so much hunting for the odd bargain as for news of Clocky. Place slowly got tattier and emptier, but he didn't close. I got to know the manager well. A Yorkshire man called Tom Ponsonby. I got a few cheap items, but never a sniff about Clocky. Till one sultry, dark day at the end of August. I was going over a mahogany chest, looking for woodworm. The wormholes were very difficult to see in the dark wood, with no lights on. My, said a voice. "It's Joff Ashton. Hey, you've been round quite a bit, Joff, asking after my health." He was only a shadow. A little shadow against a distant window. Couldn't see his face in the shadow, but I knew it was Clocky from the way he picked up a vase from the table and began to turn it over and over in his pale hands, like he was going to devour it. "I hear you've been asking about a clock as well, Joff." I was silent. My mouth was dry. He was different. In a way, a man should not be different. I had an odd fear he might be a ghost. "Well, don't you want to know what happened to me, Joff, after I got your little clock? Isn't that what you've been coming back for all these months?" He laughed. "Ha!" Not a pleasant sound, and this is what he told me. "Well, Joff, it was late when I found it on the doorstep, dark already, because the traffic out of Muncaster had been heavy. I nearly fell over it. I carried it in and read 'Happy New Year' scrawled on the packing box, and I thought one of my old mates had left it there because it was nicked and too hot to handle. I set it up in the little ground floor room at the far end of the corridor. Got it going all right, and I just sat looking at it and drinking whiskey to celebrate till nearly midnight. Then I went to bed. My mind was full of how much I might get for it. I know one or two big collectors in the States who'd ask no questions. I was wakened by about 2 by the sound of the water dripping. Banged on the light bloody quick, I can tell you. You know what a frost we had last New Year's Eve, and I've got some bloody great old slate water tanks on the roof. The water pipes are all lead and crumbling to crap. You know what water does to antiques, and I had a load of walnut veneer in at the time. Anyway, I looked at the carpet, and it was bone dry. No drips coming from the ceiling, no bulge in the plaster. But the sound of dripping now seemed to come from another room. I grabbed my dressing gown and ran from room to room, switching on lights and looking into my best stuff first. Not a trace of damp anywhere. But there might be a leak in the roof space, and a soggy ceiling just wanting to collapse. I searched the whole house. Nothing. Except that sound of dripping water, the plink water makes rolling into a puddle. Then I thought it might be outside, but when I went out with a torch, everything was frozen solid, crunching underfoot and quite silent, the way frosty nights sometimes are. So I went back to bed and switched off the light and listened to the plink of the water. Ever tried to get to sleep when a tap's dripping in the room? You lie awake waiting for the next drip. And they never come regular like the tick of a clock. Well, this was much worse than a dripping tap. There were, it seemed to me, lying listening in the dark, at least 8 different drips, dripping at different speeds, one right beside me in the room. I kept trying to place them, and the longer I lay, the keener my ears seemed to get. I couldn't just hear drips, but echoes of drips, unmuffled by carpets and curtains. Wherever the drips were coming from, they weren't coming from my carpeted showrooms downstairs, or the bedrooms either side of me, stuffed with junk I'd picked up for a song and meant to do up someday. In the end, I put the light on again and fetched the whiskey. I keep some in the bedroom for the very occasional girl who agrees to share my bed for the night. I was drinking it when the solution hit me. The frost outside must have caused condensation inside my ancient cavity walling. Quite harmless to the furniture, I rolled over and slept immediately. I couldn't do it. Fucking dripping as shit. I cannot sleep with drips, brah. I cannot sleep with the drips. I can sleep with the drip. Hey, but I can't sleep with the drip. It's obnoxious. When I woke up again, my first thought was how big the room sounded. Huge, high domed and somehow made of stone. The drips and echoes rang through it like flights of frantic birds backwards and forwards. A cold dart of air touched the cheek I lifted from the pillow, bringing a smell of damp underground. Where the hell was I? But with the stupidness of sleep, I still reached for my bedside lamp, found it in its usual place, clicked it on, and there was the whiskey bottle leering at me, an empty glass and ashtray full of dog ends, and my shirt and socks in a heap on the beside chair, though my trousers had fallen on the floor as usual, weighed down by my pocket full of loose change. But I didn't banish what I began to think of as the cavern. My eyes told me it was my bedroom. My ears, nose, and skin told me I was underground. I felt split in half, like when you wear stereo headphones and hear the guitar stumping away over your head, and the invisible singer's footsteps pacing the floor in front of you, and a huge audience stirring that couldn't possibly be contained in the room you're sitting in. I normally enjoy that sensation, but I didn't enjoy this. There must be some rational explanation. Dirt must have come up from my bedroom door that was slightly open to the darkness of the hall. I closed it in a rush and leapt back to the safety of my bed. Musty smell. My shoes lay tumbled by the bed. I got one up and sniffed the filthy, muddy sole. It smelled damp and dark and ancient. A dealer spends a lot of time in old, cold houses and damp cellars. Pulled another drink and looked at my watch. Just on 3. I lay back and waited for my old friends, the clocks, to start chiming in the showrooms downstairs. First came the long case I'd inherited from old Ellington, that nobody would buy because it carried a brass plate recording its presentation to him by the employees of Barbara Council on the occasion of his 80th birthday. It had been in the room where he died, and they don't like dead man's shoes in Barbara, do they? Fools. Don't they know all antiques are dead man's shoes? Bedroom mirrors that have reflected centuries of dead men's love-making. If you don't like the dead, buy Danish teak. Then the old white alabaster clock in the front showroom chimed in hysterically. Yeah, the one from Joe Groman's shop, green with verdigris, and when I rescued it from the flames. You're right about that, Joff. And I thought, old Joe's welcome to haunt me if he likes, just as long as he doesn't get in the way of trade. But then a haunted antique shop would be quite an attraction, draw the crowds. Perhaps that's why old Joe stayed away, out of spite. It'd be like him, that. One by one, all my old friends joined in. It was friendly in the night, like watchmen calling that all was well, but all dim and muffled by the thick walls and dusty carpets. Aha, here's a stranger, I thought. That'll be the new one. Nice chime, but so loud. fell in the house. Must have left the door to that room open. So incredibly loud, and the only one that echoed. The rest had been muffled. It was almost if there was a dripping cavern, that clock was in it. Subconsciously, I'd been counting the chimes. Any buy of a new clock does. Ratchets come wear and the clock starts chiming and never stops. It's a pretty expensive thing to cure an old clock unless you cut out the chiming mechanism altogether, and that halves your profit. It struck 10, 12, 10, 11, 12, 13. Damn. I'd have meant taking it for repair to old Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe knew how to charge. That'd certainly spoil my profit. But it didn't strike again. Maybe I miscounted. Then I shut up right. There were voices in the corridor. Footsteps coming toward my door. Vigorous steps, cheerful voicing, men out on this spree. It was hard to tell what they were saying because of the echo effect, but something like, "Drink up, Higginson," and something that sounded like, "Fais ce qui voudra, Francis. Fais ce qui voudra, A. Wilkes." Rich men's voices, assured like the local Tories celebrating on election night. Fucking Tories. Who the hell had got into my house? I leapt out of bed, shaking with rage at the cocksureness, got my old pistol out from under my pillow, the one I borrowed from the Royal Engineers when it got demobbed. Pushed open the door. Not a sign of anybody. I ran through the house. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. Front door was bolted, all 3 security chains in place. No window unlocked or broken. As I listened, a group of people passed on the main road behind my car park. I laughed. It was New Year's morning. There'd be drunks parading till the small hours. My car park was a good place for them to come and pee. It's masked by trees from the main road. Sound carries very clear on a frosty night. Something to do with temperature inversion. I might have known. The footsteps I'd heard had been crunching on broken stone. There's broken stone in my car park, but none in the house. I went back to bed and slept the sleep of the just. Or the drunk. The following morning I went over that clock pretty closely. I wanted to get a description typed up. For America. The more I looked at the clock, the better bargain I knew I'd got. All the ormolu was hand-cut, not mass-produced. A one-off job for a very rich guy. A well-off kink with a very nasty mind. He keeps using that word. He keeps using that word. A well-off kink with a very nasty mind. Same. Not just the cloven hooves and goat's head, but the egg and dart moulding wasn't really egg and dart, but alternating male and female genitals. Ooh. And the handle at the back was in the shape of a woman's breast. I began to see sexual symbols everywhere. Disturbing. I began to think I'd been without female company too long, but I kept on with my night-taking. Lastly, I had to grope around inside the ebony case. Sometimes people leave spare clock keys in there, even spare pendulums, hair clips, any old thing that in the past has helped the clock to work. I once saw a Tompion kept going by a Morris Cowley split pin. I don't know what either of those things are. But in this case, all I found was a folded piece of paper. I thought from its shape that it had been used to wedge something. The handle on the rear door was a bit loose and the door tended to swing open. The paper was brown with age, but the middle was less brown as I unfolded it. It was a disappointment, just a series of numbers. 4, 1, 44, 205, 339, 67, 404, PS 83. And it was signed in a large, spindly hand. P.S. Melmaby, Dean. But it was old. I judged Victorian. Very copperplate, like old Cleck's ledgers. Anything old will be valuable one day, so I didn't throw it away. I put it in an old tankard in the fireplace. I spun the hands right round the clock to test the striking mechanism. Worked perfectly, 1 to 12. I tried to get it to strike 13, but it wouldn't. I sighed with odd relief. No need for the expanse of old Ratcliffe. But the odd thing was, when I examined the dial, the numeral 1 had been shortened, and the numeral 13 had been slipped in underneath. It wasn't a later alteration, but Georgian work. Elegantly done. I posted off my offer to 3 gentlemen in America and forgot all about it. Went to bed that night hoping for a good night's sleep. If you remember, Joff, the thaw set in on New Year's Day and water, perfectly normal water, was dripping from every gutter. I'd hoped the jokers who'd been peeing in my car park would be in bed too, sleeping off their hangovers. But again, I awakened, and all the echoes and drips are back, and I realised I was waiting for that damn clock to chime 13. Bloody ridiculous, considering my watch said 20 past 2. I just told myself not to be a stupid bugger when I heard it chiming. 13. Oh, what the hell, I thought. I'll see Ratcliffe, and rode over. Then, through the cavern of drips and echoes, I thought I heard the sound of voices again. Female voices this time, indecipherable through their whispering and giggling. Soft feet. Somehow I knew they were bare, and thick cloaks swishing and rustling. A seductive sound that drew me, made me get up. I like women, same. Especially women tiptoeing about in the middle of the night on bare feet, giggling. But by the time I got up there was nothing to be seen or heard. A dream. A nice dream. Pity it ended so soon. Ah, you'd better get a permanent woman, Watson, I thought. You can afford one now, before you turn into one of those dirty old men that hang around nude statues in auction rooms they haven't got the money to bid for. Got back into bed and tossed and turned. Then that damn clock started chiming again, and it went on and on and on. And there was nothing worse than a clock chiming on and on in an empty house. It was like a church bell chiming, summoning. Summoning to what? I was frightened by then, not inclined to go padding along all those empty corridors in bare feet. I buried my head under the bedclothes. It would soon run itself down and shut up. Took me a while to realise it wasn't just the clock that was chiming. The bedside phone was ringing as well. I embraced that phone in my loneliness like a long-lost friend, but it wasn't a long-lost friend. It was my next-door neighbour from the other half of the haunted mansion beyond the party wall. Bully Madden never bothered to speak to me since the day I moved in. Cuts me dead when we're getting our cows in the mornings.
Are you, Watson?
He says.
That your bloody clock that won't stop chiming? What have you got there? Big Ben, you've got me awake. My wife awake, the kids are screaming for Christ's sake. Cut your head, man. Are you dead or something? Stop it, or I'll ring the police and report you as a public nuisance.
Then before I could say a word, he hung up. But I knew he'd been behind his little party wall, listening, with the phone in his hand ready to ring the police. And I can't afford to have the police nosing around the business I run. I dragged on my dressing gown and swigged a mouthful of whiskey straight from the bottle. Ooh. I even took my pistol with me, and the bell went on tolling me to what? I dropped my thing. I kept on praying it would stop before I reached the half-open door. I had to feel around for the light switch in the dark. Didn't stop. I had to reach around. I had to walk in and set its broad green pudding of a dial grinning at me. And the cloven hooves. And then it stopped chiming, just like a bossy human being that summons you to the front of the shop to make a complaint and tells you to get lost and walks out. I'd stop its rotten little games. I turned it round and took the pendulum out. But then it began to tick away like a mad thing, as any good clock deprived of its pendulum will. It was doing an hour every 5 minutes. In 4 more minutes, it would be chiming again. I laid it on its back. It kept going. I laid it on its dial. On its side, it kept stopping and starting again. I nearly threw it out the window, but I'm a dealer with a profit to make. Looked round for something to wedge in the works, and thought of the bit of browning paper I'd found that morning. As I wedged it home, I had a strange feeling that was exactly what the Victorian gent had done to stop it too. Perhaps now I'll get some peace, I said to myself. Couldn't have been more wrong. Got back into bed with the light on and hunched over another whiskey. Took a long time for my pattern to die away, but finally the drink took hold and I began to relax. It was then that I felt the bed move behind me. Just a little tremor in the mattress, as if someone lying beside me had moved an arm or a leg. I don't go home every night to an expensive wife like you, Ashton. But I have enough women to know when there's someone in bed with me. Then I thought, oh, rubbish. It's my own leg give me one of those twitches that I've had ever since I fought the Japanese in the war. In the Arakan box. I'm not going to use that word. I often twitch on the verge of sleep, especially if I've had a hard day. But I waited, with the last of my whiskey held to my lips, waiting for it to not happen again. It happened again, stronger. Felt like somebody turning over on her side. My back, you understand, was turned toward the rest of the bed. I was facing the bedside light, and I desperately wanted to turn around and look to see what it was, and I equally desperately didn't. So I stayed frozen till the bed moved a third time. Whatever it was moving nearer. It's a big, big bed. My body leapt up of its own accord. My feet caught in the bedclothes and I sprawled full length on the bedside rug. My whiskey glass flew from my hand, rolled across the floorboards and finished up with the hollow wrap in the corner. In a second, I was in the corner with it, crouching, stupid revolver pointing in my trembling hand. I knew it would be quite useless against whatever was in my bed, but it gave me the courage to stand up and look. The bedclothes were tossed back on my side of the bed, while the other side where the movement had been was as flat as a board. Furthermore, right in the middle of the flatness was a big fat copy of Miller's Guide to Antiques that I had been consulting before I went to sleep. It's a big bed, as I said. Too big for an ordinary house, that's why I got it cheap. I walked to the bed, pulled back the nightclothes. Nothing. And I remade the bed. Absolutely flat. Poked every inch of the flatness with my gun barrel, wondering about rats. Nothing. Then a little cold draught from under the bed caught my ankle. I think I screamed and leapt away. Then I cracked back on my knees and lifted the counterpane with the gun barrel. Nothing. Except the floor chamber pot I keep under there as a joke. Eventually, when I stood and shivered long enough, I called myself a stupid bastard, got back in the bed and put the light off. There I lay, waiting, shivering. There was another wriggle in the mattress, and another, but by that time I calmed myself into a mood of scientific curiosity. I reached for where the wriggle had come from and grabbed a handful of it. Now, if it had been the kind of thing you read about in horror stories, like cold bone or rotting rags or slimy, filthy flesh, I'd have been out of bed and down those stairs in the hands of our local constabulary before you could see a knife. Still in my pajamas. But it wasn't anything like that. It was warm, plump, female flesh, breathing gently. And it lay absolutely still, as a young rabbit will freeze if you catch it out in the open when it's too late to run away. Felt up it, felt down it, found a smooth hip, plump thigh, and a generous breast. Then long, silky hair, face with smooth cheeks and a turned-up little nose. I remember the eyelashes batting against my fingers like a captured butterfly, but otherwise the creature didn't stir. And oozing out of bedclothes was my arm. As my arms stirred them came a smell that wasn't me. The warm smell of a girl. Bit thick and animal, but not unwashed. Better than some of the living ladies I've had in that bed with their stale reek of gin and cheap perfume. Gin and kerosene? Come spit off bridges with me? Only this one smelt a little bit afraid. How can you smell that? Oh. Got to know the smell of other people's fear in the air-can box. Oh, that's how. A small hand reached out and clasped mine, slightly sweaty, but warm and firm. The other hand began to fumble with the top button of my pajamas. I nearly let it happen. Lonely men don't choose each other. But then you wouldn't know that. You've probably never been lonely in your life. The body was pressing close to mine now. Then I thought of the flat bed with the copy of Miller's Guide lying on top. Only suckers take the goods and ask the price afterwards. And Clocky Watson's not a sucker. I detached the yearning hands gently and got out of bed again and put the light on. The bed was absolutely flat and the copy of Miller hadn't moved. I'm proud to say I got dressed properly, though pulling my shirt over my head was a panicky moment. And all the time the bed stayed absolutely flat. When I had my raincoat on, I suddenly felt ridiculous. I'd had a bad dream. No, very pleasant dream. I was a fool. It was cold and wet outside, even if the thaw had set in. I was bone weary. The bed looked more inviting than ever, and it was my bed. I walked across in a no-nonsense mood and thrust my arm in. Immediately, under the flatness, two warm arms clutched my arm gently, beseechingly. I tried to pull my arm out, but those hands were pretty strong. I had to put in my second hand to release the first. We struggled silently, and somehow under the bedclothes, my struggling arms made the shape where a woman might have lain. Then suddenly I was free and running down the stairs, leaving on every light in the house. I walked home mourning. First thing I did after I'd had an Irish coffee with plenty of whiskey in it, you're drinking a lot, dude. You should probably talk to somebody about that. You are talking to somebody about that. Sort of. Huh? The first thing I did after I'd had that Irish coffee with plenty of whiskey in it was to box up that clock. I took it to a friend of mine I call Floradora. Her real name is Mrs. Eunice Pierce, but she has that faded good looks of an old musical star. She's been a fine woman in her day, and although her blonde hair is now out of a bowl, she can get a chest of drawers into the back of a shooting brake as well as anybody in the trade. What? What does that mean? Keep this in the back of your shop for a couple of days, Flora. Hot, is it? Fell off the back of a lorry? She lit up a cigarette and coughed appreciatively. Somebody gave it for me for a present. I'll believe it when I see it. We'll mark it property of Clocky Watson to be called for, and I'll find a place for it. I don't even know what it is. Then it can't be done. Then I can't be done. I'm a bit old for scrubbing floors in an open prison. She thrust the clock into a dark hole and piled some Edwardian corsets on top. I went home and had a good sleep, disturbed at tea time by two Dutch dealers hammering on my door, wanting gross of pewter candlesticks at £3 apiece. Then I went back to bed and slept the night away too. But by the following morning I was feeling bored. There was that trouble with the clock. I got bored without it. And though I might fret on about its immense value and the fact that Flora is both nosy and a bit light-fingered in her younger days, and her shop's about as burglar-proof as a 1930s piggy bank, and she carried no insurance, the truth was I was wanting to examine again the thing that had been in my bed. I had a sick desire to muck about, and drove round to her shop. It's not here, she said. You can't leave a thing like that here. You must be out of your mind. It's worth thousands. Where is it? I thought you didn't even want to know what it was. What was in it? I had to have a peep. I had to know what you were letting me in for. It might have been a bomb I forgot it at home. And I've got it going for you. What do you think of that? Some fool had stuck paper in it. Charming beautiful. And Budgie loves it. How do you sleep at night? Like a top. Why? Thinking of coming to join me? I don't snow, you know. Well, I know one thing now. That clock had no interest in well-preserved middle-aged ladies. I'll take it now, I said. But I've just opened up my shop on this trade. There's always a German looks in on Tuesday mornings, and I've got a couple of whatnots for him. Besides, it's a responsibility looking after a valuable clock like that. I knew what she was after. I reached for my wallet and took out a £5. Storage expenses. She took it. And I got it going for you. We took my car. The clock sat huge in the corner of her small sitting room, surrounded by Staffordshire figurines and lace. Antimacassars. What the fuck is that? Antimacassars. It looked trapped like a caged tiger at a children's tea party. Here, said Flora. He was a randy old sod that made it, wasn't he? All those boobs and pricks. Funny the things these fuckers got up to. Vickers. She handed me the folded bit of brown paper that I'd used to stop the works. What's this then? Haven't you never been to church in your life then, Clocky? That's a list of hymns and psalms for a church service. As. See? PS 83. That's a psalm. Which church? How the hell would I know? I'm not the Archbishop of Canterbury. I just look like him. Must have been a few years ago now, mustn't it? I stuffed the paper in my top pocket and forgot it. Later that day I got the clock set up and going in exactly the same place, then went to bed early, trembling with excitement. It was the stupidest thing I'd ever done in my life. But I suppose getting rid of it so easily to Floradora had given me a false sense of security. What I'd failed to notice was how Quickly, I'd grabbed it back off her again. It's always the same when you start an addiction, whether it's drink or drugs. You always think you can kick the habit any time. That's what they say. I lay reading Miller's Guide. The mass photographs of clocks, chairs, figurines swam before my face pointlessly. I wasn't really reading it all. I was waiting. But the clock struck 10 without anything happening but the rumble of a passing train. At 11, there was only a distant dog barking. I suppose I must have dozed off. Those sleepy nights had taken more out of me than I thought, because I had never heard the clock chime midnight at all. But in my sleep, I became aware of someone getting into bed with me. Only she did it in such a matter-of-fact way that I didn't really waken up. I had a skin full of whiskey again to calm my nerves. I always drink whiskey when I have a woman up to my bedroom, and I suppose I thought it was one of those. Maggie, I murmured drowsily, groping for the warmth. When she spends the night, Maggie's always tripping out to the loo. But it wasn't Maggie. Maggie is a real big armful, and her skin's slightly tough. This skin was too smooth and young. Claire? I asked querulously, thinking I'd drop a clanger, calling Claire Maggie. The body shook as if giggling, so I knew it wasn't Claire. For Claire, bed is always very serious, earth-shattering. Besides, she's thin and her shoulder blades stick out. This person snuggling under my armpit was just right. Smooth, well padded, fuddled with drink. I couldn't think who it was at all. Oh well, said my whiskey-sobbing brain. What the hell? Whoever it was certainly knew how to make love. And then the clock began to strike. It more than struck. The sound marched up and down the corridors of my house like great boots, getting nearer and nearer. No mortal clock would strike so loud. It was a noise that would shatter windows. It tried to struggle upright, full of rage that anything should so disturb my house. But sleep and whiskey held me down, and the warm twining form that burrowed deeper into the angle of my shoulder and neck almost totally enfolded me. Then the sound of real boots in the hall, crunching on loose broken stone. Doors were being thrown open, banging against my plastered walls with a force that made me break out in a cold sweat. Again I tried to struggle upright, reach the pistol under my pillow, but my companion weighed me down. Shouts. Great, jagged, angry shouts, so full of rage I couldn't understand what they were saying. A terror filled me, far greater than my own fuddled outrage. It oozed from the shape around me. It was now shaving from head to foot and exuding a cold sweat that made it feel like a corpse. There was banging and shouting right next door now. The terror coming from the thing wrapped around me filled my whole body, so that I went down into the black pit with it. Then came a new noise, drilling through the rest like a workman with a road drill. Off, on, off, on. A cool, hard, sane modern noise that dug deeper and deeper into my mind, forcing me to open my clenched shut eyes. My own bedroom ceiling, with its familiar pattern of cracks looking deeper in the glow of the bedside light. My closed bedroom door with my dressing gown hanging from it, whiskey bottle, full ashtray, and the bedside telephone ringing. It was Flora. I managed to gasp out, "Hello." "You okay?" she said in her old nicotine croak.
You okay?
She said in her old nicotine croak.
You sound funny.
I was asleep.
Bet you weren't having a very nice dream.
I'll some whiskey.
You'll ruin your bloody liver.
Man's gotta have some consolation.
You'd do better coming over here.
It was good to hear her voice, normal as catching a bus or buying a packet of cigarettes.
Hey, I forgot to tell you. There was something engraved on the back of your clock movement.
You ring me up in the middle of the night to tell me that?
It's only 11:30. Some people don't get to sleep as easy as you. Now, when my old man was alive.
What was engraved on the clock?
Faysaki Vudra.
You what?
It's spelled, you got a pencil handy? FAYCEQUIVOUDRA. It's French, but not quite spelled right. Not unless my girlish school days have let me down.
She gave a sexy... I can't do a sexy giggle and a nicotine voice at this. I don't know how to do that. I reckon she'd been on a whiskey as well. How girlish were your school days? Oh, don't tell me.
All right, Simon Pierre. Sounds like a family motto, though, doesn't it, of the guy who had the clock made?
Something like that. Now I felt sane again. I wanted to get off the phone and see what had been happening in my house. Though I could have done with her there to hold my hand.
See you.
She said abruptly and hung up. She's like that. Very brazen up to a point, and she gets hurt and goes like a streak of lightning. Never understand women. No, you won't. No, you won't. I went through what was by now a weary routine. Put on my dressing gown, tied a cord with trembling hands, stressed to bed, out of bed, find nothing. But as I searched my long, empty, undamaged corridors full of closed doors and ticking clocks, I seemed to hear echoes of footsteps and whispers and giggles, fading. I made up my mind. I would not give that Clark house a moment longer. I packed it again in its wooden box, stuffing crumpled newspapers around it, and I carried it out to the garage and locked my car. Then locked the garage and went back and sat in my bedroom wicker chair. I dozed a bit towards dawn. Next morning I drove to Muncaster. I knew I had to get rid of the clock, but I was Clocky Watson, and I was determined to make a profit on it. Went round every dealer I knew, and I swear they'd all heard of that clock. They'd be all interested as I walked in with the box, because although I've got a bad name, they know I got some good stuff. But the moment I took off the wrappings, not only did they not want to know, but they took a grim enjoyment in my frustration. By the end, I knew they were phoning ahead of me, but I didn't even bother to start taking off the wrappings. I kept a civil tongue in my head till the last shop, because I knew my raging would have only added to their pressure. In the last shop, which belongs to an old Jewish man I know, I really blew my top. "But Marcus, it's bloody Georgian!" "It isn't Georgian," he agreed with a shrug. "Look at the craftsmanship." "Superb craftsmanship," he agreed. "Worth thousands." "Worth what you can get for it," he smiled tinily. "I'm sorry for you, but I am also glad you bought it from my nephew. Perhaps now Mose will get his business back in order. Perhaps now he will save his marriage. He was stubborn, like you. He insisted on making a profit. Nobody profits from Ding's clock. Leave it up some nice, quiet little back alley. It'll come no harm. Only please, do not try to sell it back for Mosh for £1. 3 years he's suffered, and if it got hold of him again." He drew the edge of his hand across his throat. "What did you call it?" "Dean's clock. In Muncaster, in the trade, it was always known as the Dean's clock." "Which Dean?" "A Dean who's been gone for many years. I first heard of the Dean's clock as a young boy." "Which Dean?" "Oh, sorry." He shrugged. "Colleges have deans, cathedrals have deans, a telephone directory has 2 pages of men called Dean. Leave it up some back alley, Clocky. No one's looking. As far from here as possible. I have to live with my neighbours, who don't want them hammering on my door." "Be damned to you!" I shouted. "I will make a profit." I shouted because of tears of frustration were growing in my eyes. "Shalom," he said softly as I staggered out with the clock, kicking his door open in front of me. After that I drove aimlessly, trying to think of some other place to take it. But the evening rush hour had started, driving me around in frantic hooting, exhausted circles. It was getting dusk, a pale green dusk, with clouds of wind-blown starlings hovering over the black spires and chimneys of Muncaster. And the cars and the scurrying people seemed to be fading, growing distant with the day, leaving me alone with the night, clock sitting in the middle of the back seat behind me. I kept on coming back to the traffic lights by the cathedral. That's a trick of the one-way system. If you're lost in Muncaster or drifting, you always come back to the traffic lights by the cathedral. Each time I came round, the cathedral windows were lit up, golden, inviting. There was one empty place in the car park outside, a place to stop and rest my brake foot. I pulled in and stopped the engine. And behind me, mine had only been the jar as I jammed my brakes on. The clock boomed once, a jangling, angry, discordant boom, I thought, full of imprisoned anger. I was out of that car like a shot. Didn't even bother to lock it. I ran for the big, lit, open door of the cathedral. A handful of people streamed down the steps past me, women with umbrellas and solitary well-dressed old men. Beyond, the organ was playing involuntary. I'd come in at the end of a service. I stood there as the last worshippers slipped past me. It seemed to my desperate mind that they knew about the clock and they were leaving me because I'd come. I'd often felt lonely in my life, but never as lonely as then. The organ music was soaring, soothing. For a second I closed my eyes and let myself get lost in it, but I knew it was already ending, like a dying wave that would receive and leave me stranded, alone. The music stopped. The organist closed his keyboard and put his light out with a click of a switch that echoed up and down the nave like a full stop. Watched him too walk away, with a rolled newspaper and a bag full of groceries with a celery head sticking out the top. Looked at his watch as he passed. Lucky man, he was going somewhere. I just stood, waiting for someone to come and throw me out. Then I saw the man who was going to do it. He came down the center aisle, a tall, thin, black man, in a long black cassock. I'm not saying... Stop! I don't know if it's because this was written during a specific time period, but he keeps using words you don't fucking say. Sorry. Bugs me. Pisses me off. Don't. Black cassock. But he was no forbidding figure. He walked, smiling and staring about him with pride, like a child left in charge of a sweet shop. He had the most marvellous teeth I ever saw in a man. "Hello," he said with a beaming grin, taking my hand between both of us. "Welcome to our great cathedral. I suppose it was a very Christian thing to do, but I wondered how many staid Englishmen it had fighting the way. Can I help you in any way?" His eyes were brown, a bit moist with emotion, but very kind. It was like having a warm bath. "I am Father Eagle St. John Smith. My father named me after the eagle of St. John in the Gospels, but just call me Eagle." I was speechless. I'd never seen anyone less like an eagle in my life. A dove would have looked more ferocious. I warmed to him. I wanted to say something, but didn't know what to say, so I finally said, "You're new here?" Out from me, who'd never been to a church in my life. But he seemed new. He had a glossiness that doesn't last long in Muncaster. "Yes, I am new. I was ordained in our great cathedral at Barbados 6 months ago today, and now I am an assistant priest to this great cathedral. I'm going to write a book about it. There's so much to write. I learn some new things every day. Let me show you round some of the marvellous things." I let him lead me round, not really listening, just saying, "Yes, and how curious, and I see," stupidly. At last he ran down to a stop. Concern crossed his face. "But I've done all the talking. I think you wanted to ask me something." And he really wanted to know. Suddenly, his face was serious. I couldn't start telling him all about my life. He was too happy, but... But you showed up! You showed up, so that's like... You're gonna have to... So, okay. Here is a summation for you, my friend, my darling, my dear, my sweet pea. This guy finds a clock. The clock has got genitals and cloven hooves and a goat's head, and there's the number 13 on it. Yay, sweet pea. There's a number 13 on it. It chimes to the number 13 for some fucking reason. The guy, Geoff Ashton from the last story we read, like I said before, it's the same guy in every story. He bought the clock to give to this character that he doesn't like, and the character is telling him a story of what happened to him after he bought the clock. It was fucked up. He keeps waking up and hearing dripping noises, and his house smells like a cavern, and he hears people yelling and shit. It's wild. Okay. Back to the thing. Yeah, right? Same. I couldn't start telling him all about my life. He was too happy. But I didn't want to disappoint him. He so much wanted to help. Then I saw, on one of the pillars, a hymn board with numerals, just like the piece of paper in my top pocket. So I got it out. "I'm an antique dealer. I found this in a clock I bought. I've been wondering what it is. It's pretty old." He took it and produced a pair of gold-rimmed spectacles from a hidden pocket. Suddenly he was all scholar. "Oh yes, an order of service, written out for the organist. I write them out every day myself. But this is old, as you say, and written by a dean. Look, P.S. Melmerby, Dean. Why? It's from this very cathedral. Mr. Melmerby was dean from 1817 to 1864. He is featuring largely in the book I am writing. How exciting!" A sudden hope squeezed my heart. A way out, with profit. "The clock I found it in, it's called the Dean's Clock. Must have come from this cathedral. Would you like to see it? I've got it in the car." Again, that smile of pure delight. I felt, I swear, a pang of conscience. He was so happy. "I would certainly love to see your clock. What an exciting place this cathedral is to work in. Someone shows me a new thing every day. Where's your car, Mr. Watson?" "Clocky Watson. Call me that 'cause I sell clocks for a living." "Let us go and see your clock then. It must be a fascinating job selling clocks. Expect you find you always have plenty of time." He laughed uproariously at his own feeble joke and putting his arm around me, led me from the cathedral. We opened the 2 rear doors of my car, one from each side. It was full night now, and although I switched the courtesy light on, it was very dim inside. I don't think I'd have dared to strip off the wrappings if he hadn't been there. The clock glimmered, black and gold. The devil's colors. I like those colors. Art Deco? No, that's not it. There's a type of decoration that heavily features black and gold. Maybe it is Art Deco. As I pulled off the last wrapping, I joggled it, and again it chimed, faintly, jangingly, angrily. "That's one magnificent clock, and I think I've seen it before, in one of the old photographs of the deanery. To think of it coming home like this. Let me just lock up the cathedral, then come to the deanery and see the photograph." He clasped me and hugged me in a transport of excitement. I drove round to the deanery, a tall classic terraced house behind the cathedral. There was an entrance portico with blackened stone Doric columns, 6 ill-washed milk bottles, and a notice pinned at the door saying, "Dean at Diocesan Board of Social Responsibility, back at 7. That's a long... There's still 11 pages left of this story. Good Lord. "Would you mind?" said Eagle. "Can we give the Dean a pleasant surprise? On the photograph we have your clock is standing on the mantelpiece in this very hall. Can we return it there for half an hour in all its glory?" Got the clock from the car. I got the clock from the car gladly, if shakily. His idea went along beautifully with what I had in mind. "That looks just magnificent," said Eagle, standing back with his hands on his hips and head on one side. "Just like this old photograph. Even the chairs are still here. Most of those old deans were bachelors, and when they died they just left their furniture behind. You'll like this place, Mr. Watson. I'll bet we've got more old things than in your shop." "I'd like you to have this clock," I said softly, hardly daring to breathe. "It seems right it should come home. Of course I couldn't just give it to you. I've got a living to make, but I got it cheap and I could pass the benefit on to you."
"You didn't even buy it yourself. You got it for free."
"Got it for cheap." "We got it for free, bitch. We got it for free." "But I got it, blah, blah, blah. I can let you have it for 50 quid. His face was a study. "That's generous. Such a beautiful clock. But there are so many causes to give to." That's disgusting, and I don't know why. That's fucking gross. We don't like him. We don't like that guy. I hate that. That's the worst. He streaked upstairs and was back in a second. "Oh, sorry." He'd looked doubtful. "But maybe the Lord will provide." The brilliant grin came back on his face. The Lord will provide for all our rightful needs, Mr. Watson. And maybe the Dean's got something in a fund. I'll go and get that old photograph. He streaked upstairs and was back in a second. On his long, jubilant legs, and there was a clock in an old sepia photograph, rather blurred and out of focus, but as much its diabolical self as ever. Leaning on the same mantelpiece, head on hand and looking like a repressed Victorian volcano, he was the very Reverend P.S. Melberby. Melberby. With that slightly manic look that so many Victorian portraits have. Wagner looking like a madman. Gladstone looked damned. Freud looked like a demented Jehovah. They say it's only caused by having to stand perfectly still for 20 minutes while a photograph's taken, but I've always had my doubts. We were still looking at the photo and giggling when the front door opened again and a squat figure stepped in and wiped his feet very firmly on the doormat. Most of Eagle's exuberance dropped away. He said, "Good evening, Mike," in a subdued tone. Then his high spirits broke through again. "Don't you notice something different, Mike, about the hall?" The very Reverend Michael Wilbraham, Dean of Muncaster, took off his threadbare naval duffel coat, hung it on the back of an Adam chair, and wound his long maroon scarf on top. He gave a sense of weary and disabled power. The lines on his balding face had said he'd seen too much, thought too much, been disappointed too often. I just knew that I'd never sell him anything.
"What's that thing doing here?" he asked in an awful voice.
The smile faded from Eagle's face. He looked like a hurt child. "It used to belong here, Mike. It's in this old photo." He held up the photograph hopefully. Wilbraham dismissed it with a curt wave of his hand.
"Suppose that thing had to turn up again sometime.
Just hope we'd seen the last of it. My time, at least." "What you mean, Mike?" Eagle's face was querulous.
"Look at this photograph." "Have you ever looked at it, Eagle?"
Wilbraham's voice was savage with disgust.
"Have you seen the decoration on it?"
His pale, plump fingers flicked golden hoods in a goat's head, the obscene frieze of genitals. Don't flick the genitals, man. I mean, some people are into that. Don't flick the genitals. That's almost seems rude. like flicking a dog's nose, but worse. Mr. Watson was going to let us have it cheap for the church. Wilbraham looked at me as he looked at the clock.
"I'm sure he was. You will oblige me, Mr. Watson, by taking this clock away from the deanery as soon as possible, and yourself with it."
Full of sinking dread, I stepped up and took hold of the clock. It seemed impossibly heavy as I tried to lift it. Next thing I knew, I was lying in the fireplace among the fire irons, and Eagle was splashing water on my face so liberally I thought I was drowning. "He's a sick man, Mike. We gotta help him." "Sorry about this," I said weakly, trying to get up. "I was in too much of a hurry to have any breakfast, and I forgot to have lunch." But the world kept going dark, and I couldn't get up. I just lay there listening to the battle going on above my head. "Where in God's name do you find these people, Eagle? Do you have to bring them here?" "Yes, I do," Eagle said, suddenly defiant. "Like you said, in God's name. I'm not turning away people in need. What's the point in having a church if you do that? How can this poor fellow thrive in this condition?" "All right. One night. He can stay here tonight. See to him yourself. See he's gone by the morning." Gently, tenderly, Eagle helped me up the worn carpeted stairs. I sat in an armchair where he made up a huge feather bed, whistling to himself now he'd found some good to do. He even helped me off with my shoes and trousers. I was afraid he might even leave me on my shirt. "Now you lie there peaceful while I get us something to eat." I lay staring at the high, bare room. There was a dark patch of wallpaper over my head where a picture had recently hung. When Eagle, still whistling, brought up a laden tray of supper, there was a small picture lying between the 2 plates of steaming bacon and beans. He hung it back in its place above my head. It was the photograph of the very Reverend P.S. Melberby. She was there again, the warm little body snuggling in under my armpit. "Yeah, there's a... Dana, you weren't here. There's a ghost. A sexy ghost. I guess." For some reason, I was quite unable to move, except my head. I looked up. A sexy ghost, yeah. I looked upwards. The Reverend P.S. Melmoby glowered down. He looked even madder upside down. I glanced across at the black marble wash, but what light was I seeing him by? What? Explain what? It's a sexy ghost. So, there's this apparition that has been showing up the past couple of nights. He's had the clock. That's what it is. It's a ghost. And she like I'll upload this to YouTube so you can watch the beginning of it and and get the gist. Cause there's still like yeah, she was sexy. I said that. I said a sexy ghost. I said sexy ghost. Cause there's still eight pages left. There's 8 pages left. But what light was I seeing him by? I glanced across at the black marble washstand. There was a lighted candle in an old brass candlestick. And by its light, the Reverend P.S. Melmoby knelt in prayer, bearded as an Assyrian in a voluminous white nightshirt. He took not the slightest notice of me, gabbled into his hands like a man in the last stages of desperation. He sweated great drops of sweat, wept, implored his God, tore at his long, greasy, slightly curling locks, and beat his great, beefy hands, still clenched together, against the cool edge of the black marble washstand. Then he was off his knees and pacing, and down in prayer again, without hope. I seemed to watch him forever. Terrified though I was, I felt sorry for him. He became, if anything, increasingly desperate. He looked at a watch that hung from the pocket of his dark day clothes, draped hugely over a chair. He looked often across to the bed, but whatever he saw, he didn't see me. Then, down in the hall, the ding's clock began to chime. Together, the kneeling feeler and I counted the strokes. He with tiny nods of his great greasy head. 11, 12, 13. Then, with a huge sigh drawn from the bottom of his lungs, the Reverend P.S. Melmoby arose and walked across to his bed, starting to lift his nightshirt and disclosing great tree-trunk knotted legs. He climbed under the bed. The whirling whiteness of his nightshirt covered my face, and I passed out. Well, that's not good. "How are we this morning?" asked Eagle, splitting his white grin over a fine-smelling tray of blackened eggs. "Bacon and eggs. Not." And yet, that grin did not have his usual brilliance. There was something a little forced, a little guilty about it. Like he was covering something else up. "How'd you sleep?" "I had nightmares." He wiped the side of his face ruefully. His grin was now smaller, but a lot more real. It was quite a night for dreaming, wasn't it? "You too?" "I haven't dreamed dreams like that since I got ordained. I was back in Barbados being a bad, bad boy. I lived a bad life, Mr. Watson, before I became an altar boy at the cathedral and gave my life to God. After last night's dreaming, I'm wondering if the Lord hasn't said to me, 'Eagle, take your rotten life back. I don't want it no more.'" He rubbed his gleaming blue back hair and whistled. "What were your dreams, Mr. Watson, or shouldn't I ask?" "Clergymen getting into bed in long, white nightshirts." "You've been looking at our friend up there too much." He glanced at the photograph. "Oh, it wasn't just him. There were several more. Little guy with a bald head and long white hair. He had a rather sweet smile, a simple soul, but there was one really nasty piece of work with cropped ginger hair under a wig. He put it on a wig stand by the bed." Eagle leapt to his feet, the glint of scholarship again in his eye. Hang on. That's just incredible." He swirled out of the door, swirled back equally abruptly. "Were they any of these?" He had an armful of small framed pictures which he dealt out all over the bed cover, like a pack of cards. Some were faded photographs, some faded pencil drawings. I scanned them, picked out 2, like I was going through mugshots of criminals at the police station. "The Very Reverend George Tate, 1871 to 1901. Oh, he didn't live very long. He was a real sweetie. Did great shit things for the poor children. But he never married and had children himself. His face lit up and darkened as I handed him his second picture. He looks mean. The Very Reverend Gregorius Haloran. That is a mean name. That's a mean fucking name. 1785 to 1802. God, these people ain't living very long. Started off as a curate at West Wycombe. Not a man of God. Lots of funny stories. Found dead. Which one? Gregorius? Gregorious. Gregorius. Like the calendar. Lots of funny stories. Found dead in his chair one New Year's Eve. They said he died of a stroke, but I have my doubts. Pah! He threw down a picture as if it had suddenly turned slimy. Well, isn't that strange? You picked them out like that. Wonder if I should mention it in my book. Better not. I shook my head at him. I doubt the Dean would like it. You even annoyed him enough about that clock. Been looking at that clock. It's real evil. Feels bad. Bad as fetishes I've seen on Haiti. What kind of fetishes? We don't kink shame here. What kind of fetishes? This is a safe space. This isn't a safe space because there's an evil clock involved with penises. This is a safe space. We don't kink shame. I need to know the fetishes. I'm very curious. I tried to pick Mike's brains about it over breakfast, but he doesn't say anything, except get rid of that clock quick. I'm sorry. Ate up the breakfast. He came to the car with me, swinging the car door to and fro, thoughtfully. If there's anything I can do. Eagle, you've done plenty. You've been great. It's not Greek. What are you it's not Greek myth. What are you talking about? Oh, are you talking about fetishes? Is that... No? Girl, what are you talking about? No, Hades don't do that. Hades is the god of the underworld. Yeah. I hate to leave you like this. He glowered blackly at the clock. Tell you what, here's my phone number. Anytime you need me. Thanks, Eagle. I put his beautifully engraved clergyman's calling card in my top pocket, along with the folded hymn list, and drove away. I got back to the shop in a rush of business. Letters, slips of paper pushed under the door, asking me to phone people. Dealers rang up, demanding, it seemed, just the very things I had to sell. And not only offering to meet my price, but offering more than they would have asked. It was suddenly a seller's market. They stripped my shop bare. I was down to those silent ranks of black marble, and I even had tempting offers for those. I didn't have time to do anything about the Dean's clock, which was sitting in my car. Several times I thought of having it in to try and get rid of it quick on this seller's market, but I swear there was never time. Oh. So when I closed up, it was already dark, and I was feeling very much the big wheel of the antiques world. If things went on this way, I'd be very rich indeed soon. I looked up and poured myself the first drink of the evening, too tired to cook myself anything to eat. Don't drink on an empty stomach. It's a bad idea. Bad idea. I thought of the Dean's clock. It was too vulnerable, sitting out there in the car by the front door. Anyone could nick it. Kids might steal the car for a joyride. I'd better get the clock into safety. And then I shuddered and thought, no way. Let it sit out there all night. If it's stolen, I can make a good profit on the insurance. Several £1,000. Go eat something. Go eat something. Plenty of people could vouch it had been Georgian, and it couldn't do me. And it couldn't do me any harm. You should eat something anyway. Just cover your bases. And it couldn't do me any harm outside the house. I proved that. I walked to the Alvanley Arms for a meal and a few drinks to celebrate. God damn. As I said, I walked to the Alvanley Arms, even though it was a mile away and it was pouring with rain. A mile is not that far. A mile is not that far. The pouring rain, though, not great. But a mile is not that far. Not that far. I could no more have driven the car with the clock on the back of the seat than fly. Coming home again, I tiptoed past the docking car like there was a person inside. Yeah, 3 Pokemon. That's it. Not even... And they will all be Rattatas. It's a mile. 3 Rattatas. Coming home again, I tiptoed past the docking car like there was a person inside. That should have warned me it was later than I thought. In the world that clock came from, it's always later than you think. I wakened to the sound of dripping water, echoing in stony places underground. Oh God, I thought, not again. Please, not again. It's not fair. The clock's in the car outside. It's not in the house. The echoing and dripping did not listen to my arguments. I tried to reach over and put my bedside light on, but I couldn't move. All the fight was drained out of me, and not just with lack of sleep and too much drink and food. I went without sleep and food for days in Burma. I could only wait. Female giggles, swishing of robes against soft skin, then shouting. Arrogant male shouting. Oh God, that's the worst kind of shouting. That's the worst kind of shouting, is arrogant male. Arrogant, followed by arrogant male. No, wait. That way around. It goes arrogant male, arrogant, Karen. And then the rest of the shouting. That's the tier. That's the tier. Female giggles, the swishing of robes against soft skin, blah blah blah. Then the bed moved, and the warm and trembling thing snuggled in, sending its terror into me. If men have anything, it's the audacity. How dare you be in my fucking DMs? I'm mostly kidding. Mostly. Bed, and all I could do was lie there. Then I must have opened my eyes. A white, cowled figure, nothing but cloth, stood astride me. Oh, that's creepy. I hate that. With a slow gesture, he lifted his robe and displayed his penis. With all my strength, I kicked out. It didn't scream. It gurgled. It gurgled and gasped for breath and fell off the bed with a thud and lay gurgling and gurgling, gasping in the corner. I knew it was dying. I've heard men die, but it took a very long time. It kept on trying to crawl towards the door. Yeah, get the scissors. Snip. I imagine if it would sound like Play-Doh or like silly putty. I can't make that. Wait, maybe I can. Nope, hold on. Nope, hold on. That's close enough. That's close enough. Eh. That's not the sound a penis makes. That's not the sound a penis makes. I hope that's not the sound. If your penis makes that sound, see a doctor, because there's something wrong up in there. That's weird. Sorry. Then my phone was ringing, hauling me out of the hole like a flung rope. I grabbed for it in the dark. Mr. Watson? Who's that? Eagle. You okay? You sound rough. I'm okay. You sure? I'd come out to get you if I could, but can't drive. Got no license. Me neither, dude. What's worrying you, Eagle? I looked at my watch. It was well gone midnight. I've been doing some research since you left. On that clock. In our old records, I found an inventory of Gregorius Holloran's world of goods, made for the church commissioners in 1802 after he was found dead. The clock was his. He must have brought it to the house. The other deans just inherited it. You know, the nasty guy with the cropped red hair. You must have brought it from West Wycombe. What's so bloody marvellous about West Wycombe? Don't you know? The Hellfire Club. Isn't that a band? I think that's a band. Pretty sure that's a band. I'll have to look it up later. Sir Francis Dashwood, cabinet masters they were, and so corrupt they make Alistair Crowley look like the girl guide. Ooh. Ooh. Thank you. Yes, please Google it. Please. Pretty please and thank you. Thank you. I think Dashwood had your clock made for the Hellfire Caves where it all went on. Caves? Wet? Dripping caves? How'd you know? You've been there. I can hear the water dripping. The house is full of it. Oh, damn. I'm probably thinking of something else. I'm definitely thinking of something else. There's some... It's gonna bug me. Yeah. I think I'm combining, like, two names, but yeah, that tracks. When I first read this story, I thought he made it up because that's like a stupid name. The fact that it's a real sex club, and probably not the good kind, not like... I don't go to sex clubs, I wouldn't know, but not the good kind. Sex club is another name for a cult, I think. Yeah. I can hear the water dripping. The house is full of it. Jesus. That's how it's spelled. It's Jesus. I'm getting my clothes on. I'm coming to you if I have to walk. But Eagle, it's 24 miles. I'm on my way. No, wait. Yeah? Just wait there while I put the light on and check. Check what? There's nothing here. What'll you do if there is? Scream blue murder. We managed some sort of laugh between us. I switched on the light, where I had heard a man crawl and die. It was just a rather nice Edwardian towel rail and a stretch of Gubbery wall-to-wall carpet. Okay, Eagle. I'm okay. I'm starting now. Wish me luck. See, 24 miles is less reasonable. Hang on. Sorry. There's a cover for my webcam and it was bothering me. Okay. Could not ignore it anymore. It came out of the blue. I was... yeah, that's... $72? I think it's 72. If it's like 3 Pokemon per mile, 3 times 24, I think is 72. I hope I'm not stupid. I can't do math in my head. I have dyscalculia. I have to write it down, and I don't... This is what is in my desk. It's stickers and disco balls. I can't write it down. I don't have paper. I do somewhere. I have paper everywhere. What the fuck am I talking about? I'm a big fat liar. Big fat... I dropped a disco ball. Sorry, hang on. Boom. Okay. Back to what we were doing. It came out of the blue. I was still sitting up in bed with the light on and the dead phone still in my hand. I was staring at my legs under the bedclothes and thinking, rather stupidly, how could I have kicked that thing when my legs were in bed all the time? Oh, yeah, that's right. Then I looked up, and they were in the darkness. They were in the room. 5 of them. They brought the darkness with them. One still wore a robe with the hood thrown back, revealing a muscular neck. The others were naked and powerful and hairy. The heaviest build. I think there might be a trigger warning involved for here with this. I think. I don't remember, but I think so. I'm gonna give it a good like 10. Trigger warning, possibly. Essay. I don't. I hate reading this part. Here she is. So I don't even want to do the accent anymore, dude. I don't. I don't even want to do the accent anymore. Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna actually. I'm just gonna give you the gist. She did kill him. She killed him. Good for her. Okay. Okay, so the gist is he felt like he died. The end. I'm not reading that part. But at the end of it all, there I was, sitting up in my own bed with the dead telephone in my hand because you asked me to wave. Yeah, no, she apparently she killed one of the club members. And that's all I'm gonna say. I'm not reading that shit. I'm not fucking reading it. By the end of it all, there I was, sitting up in my own bed with the dead telephone still in my hand. I remember feeling myself all over, moving my arms and legs, one by one, wriggling my soul round inside my skull and amazed I still existed, physically untouched. And the dripping was gone. And the echoes were gone, and somehow all my fear was gone. The worst had happened, and I was still here. So gone was my fear that I put out the light and lay back, totally shattered, but relaxed. And immediately, that female thing was lying against me, relaxed, trusting, asleep. It murmured, just as any sleeping will murmur. "What's your name?" I asked. I read that somewhere once, that you must always ask a strange spirit its name, like Christ asked the devil in the Bible, and its name was Legion. The voice, when it came, it was the only thing I'd ever known. The time I bought up the old church clock at Alston. It hadn't gone for donkey's years, but when we started to take it apart in the darkness of the tower, putting oil on the screws to loosen them, it chimed for the last time. A great creaking thing, a thin, ghostly screeching, whirring, and then faintly, the clock spoke. "My name is Susanna, sir. I am a good girl. I did not mean to go to Mr. Charlotte's house, but she offered a bed, and I had no money, sir. She said it would be nothing, just a few gentlemen singing and dancing, and lots to eat, and rowing on the river in boats, sir. I didn't intend no harm when I kicked him there, sir." "And so they killed you," I said in a creaky whisper to Macharon. "Aye, sir, as the clock was chiming, sir. And I was afraid to go to my Saviour, sir, because I'd killed a man. And I was afraid of hell, sir, so I went and hid in the clock, sir. I remember thinking it was like a little house where time itself lived, and I've lived there ever since, sir." Oh, And all the ones in this house, the other girls, the men who killed you? No, sir. They be just my memories, sir. I can't help thinking of, sir. She says sir a lot. There's only me, sir. Will you protect me, sir? Ha! I was very good and faithful, sir, to most of them, except that Haloran, sir. He were a devil, and the devil took him.
Good. Good.
Didn't they ever tell you you could be forgiven? That you could go on to heaven without fear? No, sir. They never told me that. Not in all the years. Could I, sir?
Sure you could.
They told me I must stay in the bed, sir, or I'd go to hell, sir. If it be all right, could I stay with you, sir, and go on to heaven when you go, sir? Then it won't be lonely, sir. She was snuggling tight. She was very warm and loving. You feel so real. How do you do that? I touch your mind, sir. Nobody else could feel or hear me, sir, if they was here. Only you, sir. If you like, I can touch your eyes, so you can see me too, sir. As you were before they killed you, or after? I repressed a shudder. Oh, before, sir. For you. They did tell me I was pretty back home. I only showed myself as I was after I was killed to Haloran, sir, because of what he did to me.
Yeah, traumatize that motherfucker. Traumatize him.
Good girl. I'm proud of you. We spent a happy night, Ashton. The happiest in my life. Till Eagle came hammering on my door at 6 a.m. I'm sorry about Eagle, but I could never make him understand. Yeah, it's weird. It's described as a British ghost story, and I'm just like, yeah, all of these stories seem like a cry for help, and I'm like, are the British traumatized? Because this is described as British ghost stories. So, like, Britain, are you okay? You're not. No one's okay right now. I couldn't make him understand. We had harsh words. Yeah, we had harsh words and parted bad friends. Well, what do you say about the little present you gave me now, Ashton? You've made me happy. You've made me prosper. So I owe you something. That's why I've told the manager to give you a good discount on anything in the shop.
You're insane, I shouted at him, but when I looked up,
he was no longer in the room, and not having heard him go, I began to wonder if he'd been a ghost. But being a realistic man, I went to have a talk to Ponsonby, the manager. I've just been talking to Mr. Watson, Ponsonby.
He's gone, sir.
So he was here? Never stays long, sir. This shop is just a backwater to him now, more for buying stuff and storing it than selling. He's mainly busy with other shops. Other shops? My voice acquired an incredulous squeak.
What other shops?
London, Brighton, Stratford, Paris is next, they say. He's a big man in the trade now, sir. And he told you to give me a good discount. Yes, very warmly he thinks of you, Mr. Ashton. Said you made a fortune. Says you made his fortune. I stormed out and didn't go back. But I did a fair bit of detective work. There were Watson antique branches in London, Brighton, Stratford, and Paris, and later in New York and the south of France. Clocky indeed had the luck of the devil. And I even paid a call on the Hellfire Caves in West Wycombe. Don't go there. That's a cursed place. Don't fucking Don't go there. Goddamn idiot. They exist. They're a spooky tourist attraction now. Not to my taste. Big garish with their shop window dummies dressed up in monks' habits and their canned spooky music conveyed over a loudspeaker system. And there was indeed a Francis Dashwood and a Higginson, though I could find no trace of a Franciscan called Ormond B. Fuck that guy specifically, by the way. Fuck that guy specifically. But the oddest thing of all is that the caves, being carved from chalk, are pretty dry, without the sound of dripping water anywhere. So I shrugged and forgot the whole business, until the day Clocky died. He died in his Rolls Royce on a road called the Grand Corniche on the Riviera, where he had a villa. Oh, God. The Corniche had some pretty steep hairpin bends, and on one of them, at the age of 66, Clocky met his death in the form of a large tourist coach. His death wouldn't have caused much fuss, even though he was by that time a multi-millionaire, Jesus Christ, except for what the coach driver said at the inquest. He said that Clocky was on the wrong side of the road, wasn't looking where he was going, because he was laughing and fooling around with a young girl in the front seat of his Rolls. The young girl was plump and pretty, with rosy cheeks and long fair hair, and she had her arms around Clocky. Yeah, sex cult. Fuck the sex cult. Not like that. Don't fuck the sex cult, but fuck the sex cult. You know what I mean. The driver was... okay. And they were still laughing when the Rolls went off the road and fell 1,000 feet down the cliff. Jesus. The driver was deeply shocked, kept on saying, "That young girl and that old man." It happens. Don't judge. Sometimes old men have sex with sexy ghosts. Don't judge. When they got to the crashed Rolls, Clocky was dead, still with, they said, a smile on his face. And the doors of the car had not jolted open. They were still... They were still locked shut. Old men totally have sex with ghosts. You can't tell me otherwise. And the doors of the car had not jolted open. They were still locked shut. In fact, they were jammed and had to be pried. I think there's a typo in here because it says priced. Prised. Unless that's actually a word that I don't know about. And of the young girl who had been laughing, there was no sign, neither in the car, nor on the hillside, nor for many miles around. So, what I'm going to do next time, I'm going to read the next story first before I read it here, because, there are some stories in here that, I guess have, it's not old English, because supposedly, all these stories are from, 40s and 50s time era. Yeah, I might just switch to Goosebumps, because that's the only story so far that has had that type of scene in it. And, especially with, because I wanted to read the one with the haunted spectacles. But now I don't. Because I don't want to read what those spectacles are going to be making people see. It's fucked up. It's fucked up. I'm not reading it. So we're going to move on to Goosebumps. And then, if I want to do any, spooky stories from now on, I am going to read them first and decide from there. And, actually, I did get something for my birthday. I got, Haunted Portland, Oregon. So if I want to do anything that's ghost story, actual ghost story, I might do this one or that trucker ghost stories one that I mentioned. Because I ain't about that fucking life, bro. I ain't about that fucking life. And if you... Listen, I gotta rearrange my books here because I got a big old stack. Oh yeah, trucker ghost stories. I also have I have a lot of ghost story. Like, I have haunted. I think I have another Haunted Oregon book, and I have do not make ghosts your pets. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. That's how you get Pet Cemetery. That is how you get Pet Cemetery. Um. So, yeah, we're gonna be only doing. We're not gonna be doing none of that shit. Cause while it does happen, this is a safe space. We don't read about those things. We, if we, if we have discussions about those things, it's not gonna be here. It's gonna be somewhere else. It's gonna be private. It's gonna be like a secret channel somewhere. This is not the place. This is not the platform. I am not going to present that energy into my stuff. I refuse to do it. I'm not going to do it. I refuse. So what we're going to do is move on to Goosebumps. Is what. And then maybe like some other genre of short stories. We'll figure it out. We'll think of something. This stream was 2 hours. So when I do the Goosebumps books, I think I'm going to do like 2 chapters at a time, maybe. And I like, what I like to do, and I've done it with almost every single, there's the Create Your Own Adventure Goosebumps books. And I would, on purpose, when I would read them by myself as a kid, I would read them without like skip to page 23 or go back to page 7. I would just go page by page and see if I could make sense and be like, I want to read all of the stories at the same time. So I would just go in I would go in like in page order instead of story order, and I kind of want to do that and like just make it mild chaos, touch unhinged, choose your own adventures stream, but all the adventures at the same time. So I think that's what I'm gonna do next time. I have to go to the library. Not right now. I can't go to the library right now. It's 11 o'clock and I have to do my French stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this horribly long stream. I didn't realize how long that fucking story actually was. So I will see you. Am I doing anything on Monday? I don't think I'm doing anything on Monday. Pretty sure I'm free Monday. I might do Monday. 9 o'clock again, unless I feel like 3 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning. I don't fucking know. Ooh, I don't fucking know. Sometimes I get in a mood. You don't know me. Okay. Alright. I'll see you later. Bye.